taking place on Friday, Saturday. But just a day after that, it was happy birthday to the Constitution of Kenya 2010, following the promulgation of that back in 2010. So what a momentous occasion. And of course, all of that is coming at a time when there's much talk about the Constitution. Is it time to review it? And back in Bomas, where the Constitution was birthed, is the scene of yet another conversation, which is attempting to change the Constitution. But first, I want us to listen to the President in a moment, and that is William Ruto, who's been talking about just some of the changes that will happen in that national dialogue. But it's also coming at a time, of course, when there's the National Dialogue Committee that has now gotten the full nod of both houses of Parliament. We'll get to that in a moment, but this is a good time to bring in our guest gangster tonight. That's Bobby Mkangi, constitutional lawyer, was there when it all began. What are your thoughts around this 13 years later? What's your assessment of the implementation of the Constitution?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, making me a gangster, a gangster who's prowling in the darkness of the streets of Nairobi.
Absolutely.
As you said, happy birthday to Katiba. There would be an assessment whether it's happy or not. But again, a momentous occasion for Kenyans to reach this milestone, for this Constitution to achieve its, and now really entrench itself within the teens. We know also, as humans in our development, it's within teenage life where we go across many changes, many challenges in our lives. And I guess this is also what you are seeing of this document, very important document. But also, maybe to mention on the eve of the 13th anniversary, that's Sunday, August 27th, and the issue of the darkness. I'll actually join some colleagues in the civil society space. We were at Mazingira Institute, and on that Friday we having an event celebrating and marking the 13th birthday of the Constitution. And the lights went off. And for a while, we didn't know what was happening because, fortunately, where we were, there was a backup generator, which did kick in. Yeah. Unfortunately, the airports failed.
Yeah.
And so events went on. But I remember by the time we were leaving the event, it's only the darkness at the airport that had been communicated and was prominent in the gadgets. And I believe it speaks to what Linus was trying to say, that most of the times, and I think it came out in this incident also, when such incidents visit with us, there's an aspect of how the elite are affected that is given prominence, not to downplay the importance of the installation that JKIA is, but it's up until I got home on that night that I actually knew it's a national blackout. But I thought there was a blackout. It affected momentarily a few areas, but prominently the airport.
Yes.
And so it goes to show perhaps where we are as a society, because we have to remember that Kenyans clamored and fought hard for this Constitution through blood, tears, loss of life, loss of property. You know, for all reasons, the most important reason, and we find it in the preamble, was to ensure that we improve the well-being of each and every Kenyan, you know, every child, man, woman, you know. And so when we assess where we are in the implementation of this document, sometimes people talk of full implementation, and I like reminding them that you can never have a full implementation of a constitution because you have to improve day by day. And so But what we have to look at is, are Kenyans better off? You know, yes.
Would you say they are?
I don't think so. Yes, we have done pretty well in the infrastructural aspects of the Constitution, if it's enacting laws, if it's setting up governments. Now we are also looking at 10 years of county governments. If it's building more courts, if it's recruiting and appointing more judges. We've done that, and we've been doing that for 13 years. But we have to ask ourselves, are those, or is that infrastructure delivering what it is supposed to deliver to Kenyans? The courts are supposed to deliver justice, not the court. The court is in vain. So is justice being delivered through that mortar and the fork? Yeah. Schools, we are probably building more classes. Yes, a great shortfall. We are struggling through what education and how we are going to educate our children, you know, the CBC debate and all. But we have to ask ourselves, with all that, are we educating our children through these facilities we are working hard to put across? We've set up county governments. Have they attained, or considering also 13 years being relatively a short period for transforming a community and a society like ours, which for about 50 years was using a document which some people even don't think was a constitution. But there was an element of the entrenchment of certain habits. So 13 years to expect that we've changed everything would also be overstepping our expectations. Yeah. But are the indicators showing that we are working towards, if it's delivery of justice, ensuring each child is healthy, can go to school, young people can get an education and get jobs and be self-reliant and participate in the socio-economic aspects of this country. So all those questions, and now we have the debate about the cost of living. Yes, and an aspect of it is beyond you know, our authorities. I mean, these are global trends that are affecting everything. But an important thing, we're talking about, you mentioned the issue of how Kenya Power officials communicated and reacted to this. Yeah. So there's a cost of living issue. I think people are not satisfied with the way the authorities are conducting themselves within this very, very, very difficult situation. And so my assessment would be it's a mixed bag, but I think we are not on the right track. Not in terms of, in my assessment, the document. Yes, there are those who are proposing changes and everything, and I wish they could show Kenyans, because the Constitution also says any Kenyan, if you look at the document and you see something that can be put to improve the document, then you make the proposal to Kenyans, and if they buy it, they're going to amend either through Parliament or through their own popular initiative. Yeah. So all this debate that is going on, I think that what Kenyans need to, and what the framers of the processes need to communicate to Kenyans is how the changes they propose, where they are seeing difficulties, are going to improve the lives of Kenya, not make somebody get a position.
Maybe,
and, you know.
Maybe Yvonne, if for a moment you can just engage Bobby as a framer.
Yes. I like how it says the framers.
Because he was involved in quite closely in the putting together of this document. Now, in your own assessment, I don't know what the committee that you were part of, for example, projected in terms of how the Constitution will play out. Are there things that you probably, or clauses or chapters that you considered potential areas of amendment after some time?
Well, one, just to mention, I like saying, and you look at the preamble of the Constitution, it uses the term we. So this document was framed by all Kenyans, and through the affirmative confirmation through the referendum, then we all became framers of this document. Perhaps I played a small role in drafting and trying to put it in constitutive or constitutional language what Kenyans framed as their present and their future. To come to your question, you may remember that one, like I mentioned, the Constitution provides opportunity to any Kenyan to propose a review or an amendment of the document. Articles 255 through 257 give that opportunity. And in other areas, there are opportunities for ventilation, you know, through the courts, how they interpret and give positions around ambiguous or contested issues. Also programmatically, you know, when, like I was saying, we build infrastructure, but there's fidelity of using the infrastructure to breathe life to the Constitution. Then we are also helping the Constitution to grow, and in that we are doing what we call constitution building. So there is that. It's open-ended and any time, provided...
Is it time to change it?
Any time is a time to... It depends on the issue, and that's what the point I was getting to. But I wanted to remind you that the first 5 years of the Constitution, there was the Constitution Implementation Commission, which was supposed to put in place the relative and enabling legislation. But there's no time scale. It depends on the assessment, like I was saying, of any Kenyan, any institution that thinks we may need to change this. But to remember and to mention that, and it will be a good moment to remember my friend, our friend, I would say patriot, the late senior counsel, Nzamba Kitonga, who stewarded as chairperson this process quite successfully as chairperson of the Committee of Experts. He used to give guidance, and even at the point of promulgation, the same question was posed, and that there is no mention, express mention of when the Constitution or certain clauses can be changed. But he said, in his view, he thought, you know, after 10 years, we give the document 10 years, and then after 10 years, we could, you know, have a look and assess how we have performed. And yes,
we've done 13,
yes.
Bobby, and I just want to try and get your views on what we see qua ground. One is we've seen cabinet secretaries being given an opportunity to speak in Parliament. We've seen the president saying they should go there and answer questions. And if you compare that with what used to happen, ministers used to sit in the House and answer those questions. Did you as drafters maybe get it wrong when it comes to that separation of the role of a cabinet secretary that is former minister? I also wanted to get your feel on the principle of separation of powers, because very much we still see the Parliament operating from State House, I think more frequently than it used to under the old Constitution. The Constitution intended that the Houses of Parliament are actually independent of the executive. That is not the reality on the ground.
That's true, and I agree with you. And that's why I think we need to, and sometimes I feel we miss the point when we get the politics wrong. Sometimes people talk of constitutional moments, whereas to me maybe they're just political moments. Unfortunately, the Waswahili say ukubwa ni jaa. Jaa is a place of, you know, dump site. The Constitution being the mother law seems to be the mkubwa who is jaa. We sort of use it as a scapegoat for all the problems that visit with us, and especially political problems. And so, like you mentioned, Linus, the intention, and especially the system we created, the presidential system, Kenyans ran away from the old system. In fact, part of the reason why there was a clamor for a new constitution was to run away from that old order, like the example you gave, where we had a semi-parliamentary system with the president and government ministers being members of parliament. But at the end of the day, and considering that through the negotiations, tough negotiations, but at the end of the day, Kenyans endorsed close at 70% of this system, the presidential system. And you remember also we had, though short-lived, but quite robust and engaging period prior to the referendum, where the whole nation was mobilized and was captured by the debate around the proposed Constitution of Kenya 2010. And people did understand the difference between the system we're going to adapt, why we're going to adapt it. Yes, there are political antecedents, but beholden to the fact that the separation of powers principle, the democratic principle, was key to them. And this was indicated, you may remember that the proposal that cabinet secretaries not sit in parliament or not be members of parliament was a proposal that was given as early as when the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission team led by Ashpal Gai, Professor Ashpal Gai, went around the country as early as 2000, 2002, which was also entrenched within the Bomas process, 2003, 2004, 2005. So you can tell that Kenyans are already sick of this mingling between the different arms of state, and particularly the executive controlling the other arms of state. And that's why they propose this system. Yes, we are not getting there. One, as I was saying, it takes time to change our bad manners, to miseducate, relearn, unlearn. And again, I think, unfortunately, our political system, mobilization and administrative system, is still beholden to the presidency and the executive, and especially through the political party system, still having the ability to mobilize and capture political institutions, especially politicians. So where you find in parliament, and right now we have the presidential system where parliament is a distinct institution, but the parliamentarians are not distinct. The parliamentarians are still beholden not to the work they have been elected to do in the Parliament of Kenya, but to their parties and their party leaders. And this is where we are losing it.
And Bobby, because there has been at least 3 attempts to amend the constitution. The first one was Okoa Kenya. Then there was Punguza Mizigo by Third Way Alliance, and then later on the Building Bridges initiative that was quite protracted until the Supreme Court. Do you think yourselves, as you are drafting, you made it so difficult for Kenyans to express what they may want to change? And then look at that, how difficult it is. Was it a good thing, a bad thing? But even as we reflect on that, speak to us about that spirit of constitutionalism in the institutions, but also in the people of Kenya, not just the leaders, but in the people of Kenya.
Yes. Hot on the heels of your last point, I think that's important because I also like, whenever I mingle with Kenyans, to remind them that the Constitution, because we want it to play a big role in our day-to-day lives, improve our well-being, we must also pay fidelity to that Constitution. Article 10 does not only obligate state institutions. It actually states every person, including every citizen. And so, cutting to the chase, for instance, 3 rounds of elections. Have we seen a difference in, maybe the last one, there was a bit of some change, but cosmetic. But have we seen the change in our tribal affiliations and tribal voting patterns? No. Have we seen a change in how our political parties are mobilized and organized? the owners, chieftains of communities. We still organize the way the colonial master left us. And so that, I would say, goes to myself as a mwananchi, because I have to ask myself, when will I liberate myself, in as much as there are other factors affecting how I participate in the political space. At the end of the day, when I go to cast my ballot, it is my choice, and so I think we also need to, in ourselves, be faithful to the Constitution, because, again, it is from ourselves and our conduct and our values that we determine who become the leaders of this country. And it's the leaders through Article 1 whom we delegate our sovereignty to. So if we miss the point at that juncture, then everything falls apart. And the three attempts you talked about, I think I would say those are the three major attempts, because there have been several. There have been, members of parliament suggesting. I think there have been wananchi also petitioning at different times, but maybe those attempts don't get, the level of limelight like the three you mentioned. But as I said, it's Kenyans themselves. We have to remember that this constitution was framed by Kenyans, and they were responding to their experiences of the last 50 years, and also certain aspects of the colonial era. And so when they looked at the document that was called the Independence Constitution, and they saw how it could be amended, overnight, until eventually it became a patchwork of a constitution. So they were deliberate in saying, yes, we may amend this document, we may review, because it cannot be perfect, and with time it also has to live within the changes of the nation. But again, we don't want it to be that easy as it was previously, because if you make it that easy, that it's easier to amend a constitution than an act of parliament, then we'd rather not have one at the end of the day. And I think that's why they made it that by the time we get to constitutional moments, or by the time the debate leads us there, a lot has been, and the nation has been galvanized towards that. And I think maybe as I summarize, is to say the other thing we have seen that why it's been difficult. To me, I think it's because that 2010 moment was a moment when I would say the stars aligned. It's the moment when these different interests, the balance, because it started in 92, and some may say even previously, and different attempts, 97 with the IPPG, and then the CKRC takes over, bombers, and then the failed referendum, not in terms of those who are proposing the document. In 2005, then the big moment in 2007, and then voila, in 2010, we have this document. So I think all that experience and the final moment when Kenyans agreed to give and take was a special moment, and I think the attempts thus far have failed because they are trying to unravel something which was of a very special moment and very special nature in our country. And I think, as I was saying, the moment will come, but the proponents towards that moment must prove to Kenyans that what they're proposing is for the benefit of every Kenyan child, every Kenyan woman, every Kenyan man.
And maybe, Bobby, we can just listen to Professor PLO Lumumba, who spoke last Sunday in favor of amending the Constitution. Let's listen to Professor Lumumba.
Is there a constitutional moment? Yes, there is a constitutional moment. When you see a country after every election goes on the edge, when you see a country that is extra-constitutionally engaged in dialogue, it tells you that this is the time to reason together.
Isaac Kalua, Dr. Isaac Kalua of the Green Party, actually also was in the press conference. Let's just listen to Isaac Kalua.
It is only in order, it is normal that constitutions are relooked into 10 years after. We have been grappling, leaders have been talking about it. The issue has been who's going to bail the cat. And we are here on behalf of Kenyans to give it the oomph that is definitely needed to take us forth.
So Dr. Kalua wants to bail the cat, and Professor Lumumba is saying this is a constitutional moment. Bobby, do you agree?
As I was saying earlier, because our constitution does not expressly provide for that moment, the moment arrives, and one, that terminology, you know, or theory provided by an American theorist, Bruce Ackerman, which is highly debated around whether there are constitutional moments per se.
And how do you know when you're in that moment?
Exactly, says there are those moments, and I think that's what Mwalimu PLO Lumumba is trying to argue in that footage, that we are probably seeing a lot of restlessness. The country has experienced a lot of restlessness, and we are seeing this every time we have an election. But we have to remember also, and especially considering that our constitutional election management system is heavily influenced by the Kriegler report. A lot of what was proposed, and in reaction to the post-election violence of 2007 and early 2008, and the Kriegler Red Commission that looked into what went wrong, you know, or what was wrong with our elections management system. And so a lot of that is in ink, on paper. The unfortunate thing, and I still go to that, that my assessment is that it is not a fault of the gadget, and the gadget being the constitution. It's probably us, the users. It's a user's fault that we are trying to synthesize as a constitutional fault. I would invite many of the proponents of the changes to show Kenyans in black and white this article. We are failing to achieve what we promised ourselves through this article because of this comma, and I'm not saying there are those moments in the Constitution, but I think this national dialogue we are talking about, which needs to also be broader than constitutional change, needs to be about assessing what has failed in every article, what has failed in different parts, so that Kenyans can truly say, yes, here we can improve. If we add these words, if we add this comma, we punctuate here and there, then we'll have a better document. Because tutasalia kuwa wale nyani wale. We're just changing the forest, planting more flowers, you know, cutting the hedges, and we're still the same monkeys, you know, sorry to use that metaphor. And so that's, I think, what, as these debates are healthy, the proposals are healthy, they help us to take stock of where we are as a country, but in taking stock, and especially when we go to the document, beyond other things, the other major things for me, I think the political system, the restlessness, what is called restlessness may be because perhaps a few people are not happy with the results of the elections. You know, it doesn't mean that the electoral system has failed. So we need to assess that. Is it that people are not happy, or is it the system that is in disrepair, and the black and white, needs to be changed? And that's when we will decide whether it's a constitutional moment or not. When we've arrived to the point where we say, yes, what will take us forward is us changing the content of this document, then voila. But if it's not, let's revisit ourselves and change our conduct.
Absolutely.
You know, Bobby, we had a big conversation here, right here on this bench some time back about the constitutional moment. And at the time, BBI was in its heights, and President Uhuru Kenyatta at the time said this is a constitutional moment. And we had a very interesting discussion. But there's something that maybe needs to go to the context, and that is when the national environment, the mood of the public, you can feel it when it's happening. And for a very long time, between 92 and the time the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was written, there were so many constitutional moments because the agitation was coming from the people, right? Yeah. The questions were actually constitutional. They are very, very clear. People are talking about, is this how we should be governed? Is this how the presidency should be? Should we have devolution? They are having substantive questions and points about how they should be governed. Now, we have this discussion now about amending the Constitution. And Bobby, I agree with you. It's about very specific issues. Do you want to look into the election laws and find out what is it that is not working? Do you want to look into maybe the structure of the executive and have a suggestion to rearrange that? And you can do that without subjecting Kenyans to this very personal view of, oh, this is a constitutional moment. Constitutional moment, especially in the way it's being declared right now here, to me, sounds a bit like a marriage proposal. It's very personal. You can't take that to be a national feeling that, yeah, there's this national mood to propose,
if I add,
pop the question.
I like saying, you know, like beauty, the constitutional moment
is in the eye of the beholder.
The eye of the beholder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your constitutional moment might not be my constitution.
But there are constitutional moments, and we've had them.
And I think so. In our history,
we've had them.
Yes.
And this is not it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we have much more to talk about, including that dialogue that is well on its way now. It's set to kick off proper tomorrow. We'll come back and talk about that and much more. This is NewsGap.